National Minister for Resources Keith Pitt has been pushing in federal parliament for what he calls an adult conversation about nuclear power.
Yeah, the message here, mate, is pretty straightforward. Technology has moved. It's like trying to compare the old FJ Holden with what's happening now with a Tesla, for example. Things have really moved on. I think this is a part of the debate that we really need to get across to a number of people, but particularly the Australian people. All we're talking about is a source of energy that produces steam. The rest of the generation piece is exactly the same as an existing coal-fired power station. You're just making your steam from a different energy source.
The paradox is that for decades we've been digging up uranium. Australia's the third biggest producer in the world. In 2016, former South Australian Governor, retired Rear Admiral Kevin Scarce, ran a royal commission into prospects for a nuclear power and waste disposal industry. How big a problem would waste disposal be?
Look, waste disposal is a significant problem, but already we've seen around the world geological storage, deep geological storage being activated. We have the perfect climate here, the perfect seismic inactivity. We've got areas of a nation with no underground water.
Your study actually looked at nuclear waste as an opportunity, both for financial reasons and energy reasons.
Yes, I think the issue for the storage of waste is it's there for hundreds of generations, and that's a big issue for people to get their head around. And you wouldn't do it, A, unless you needed to, and B, unless there was some benefit arising from it. I think both of those things would be applicable for Australia. There are many nations that don't have a safe repository for long-term storage. If the people of the nation felt that it was appropriate, we could do it, and we could do it safely.
I'm quite optimistic about nuclear waste. There are technologies that are becoming available using accelerator technology and some very clever nuclear chemistry, where I think from about 2045 we will be able to reprocess practically all the nuclear waste that exists in the world. And in the case of the fuel, we will then generate fuel for the next period of time that can be reused.
The farming town of KIMBA on South Australia's Eyre Peninsula has become a testing ground, grasping a role in our nuclear future.
So most of the waste is coming from Lucas Heights. Right.
It's a wonderful opportunity for our community and something that really is important for Australia.
Jeff BALDOCK is a third-generation farmer out here. He's volunteered to store Australia's low-level nuclear waste on his property.
Our family owns the Napani property where Australia's radioactive waste facility will hopefully be situated. We have all of our children home on the farm with us. We have 8 grandkids coming along. I see this as a wonderful opportunity to give them a chance of employment and a good life here in KIMBA.
The federal government ran a poll to give the people of KIMBA a say on the project.
This is a community for which there was more than 60% support. It's a wheat farm, it's cleared, it's remote, it meets all of the technical and feasibility pieces that you would need for this facility, and yet it's taken 6 years, $60 million and a lot of pain and angst, and it's not finished yet.
There are still vocal opponents.
I'm a member of the No Radioactive Waste on Agricultural Land in KIMBA or SA committee. Our committee is opposed to the siting of the National Radioactive Waste Management Facility in the KIMBA district. We believe the federal government should be looking for the best possible site for this facility and that is not on farming land.
Tell us about that emotive reaction to nuclear waste.
I mean, there's a whole lot of things that get thrown up, all of which have been disproven. Now, whether that's the impact on local agriculture and what will happen in terms of their ability to export to other markets. Well, if you go to Champagne in France, that's where their repository is in France, right next to some of the the most well-known production for grapes and others in the world. So it's a nonsense argument.
This is the corner of our property here. We're within the 10 kilometres from the Pandy.
There is opposition there as well, of course. There are some vocal opponents. What do they fear from this waste that is currently stored all around the country in hospitals?
Well, the biggest fear is always the fear of the unknown. It's predominantly waste from nuclear medicine, so it's gowns, it's gloves, it's needles and bits and pieces. There's very little that comes from elsewhere. But the facility itself, Chris, is absolutely necessary. I mean, this is a piece of national infrastructure, and on most recent advice, every single Australian will utilise nuclear medicine to prolong their life, to help them treat cancer, to identify cancer. And yet it took months of negotiations to get the opposition on board just to support it. And even then, it was done in a way which was not ideal, but we got an outcome.
But if it's such a struggle just to get to this point with our relatively tiny repository for low-level, mainly medical waste, will Australia ever consider its own nuclear energy program? If people had the choice and they were sitting on their back veranda looking out across the valley, do you think they'd rather see across the other side of the valley a coal-fired power station, a wind turbine farm, or a modern nuclear reactor?
To be frank, Chris, I don't think they like any of them.
They just want the juice.
That's exactly right. Not in my backyard. And this becomes the fundamental problem. Look, I think that those challenges are solvable, but not in the short or medium term. It takes a very significant strategy. It'll take a lot of political courage and leadership. And look, unless there is bipartisan support, I just don't see that happening.